Good afternoon. This is Professor Amina Al-Din with Muslim Network TV on the show Critical Talk. Today, we're having a continuation of a conversation on race, and we're really looking in detail at as much detail as we can, just in a conversation with members of the Muslim community here in Chicago. We're going to look at how communities are doing, conversations on race, how we've been forced to reconsider traditions during this quarantine and pandemic, and what we could possibly see for the future. Today, I have with me attorney Abdullah Mitchell and Imam Frederick Aldine.
Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Uh-oh,
Alex,
he moved. Now we're looking at the picture behind you.
yes, I'm getting there. It says I'm having trouble connecting. Unstable
That's
internet
okay.
connection. I'm sorry about that.
Move your camera to your right. We're looking behind you and not at you.
A little bit more.
To your right. I'm sorry, to your left. It's your left. I think
That's
it's
not it.
because
That's not.
it's snowing outside and all kinds of good things are happening with the weather. Um, we're having a little bit of problem. To your left some more. To your left. Okay, and then down a little bit. There you go. Down a little bit. But that's okay. One of the things we talked last time in general about things happening with the pandemic, but what I want to focus in on today is your perception as members of you all go to various communities. How are the communities doing in this prolonged quarantine? Are they in quarantine fatigue? Are the Jumas keeping up online? Have there been has there been some change in the content of the Friday talk? Everybody don't start at once.
Well, I'll jump in. We all are suffering from pandemic fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
As social beings, we're used to having contact, and online, the virtual as we are doing now offers an alternative, but it's not doesn't quite compare to physical contact, being in and near in presence of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it does promote a sense of isolation, and that all where can wear on you over a period of time.
Well,
What I've what I've heard is basically trying to deal with the problems that the pandemic has caused with regards to psychological and social and physical. People having trouble staying locked down and wanting to feel they're feeling antsy about getting out and enjoying the outside and breaking free of the prisons that their homes have become. So they're pretty
well,
much
it's
practical
interesting
topics.
that you all talk about social beings, prisons, etc. We're not in prison. Prison looks a little different. And we're speaking as though everybody has green grass outside, sunny skies, things are well. But Muslims across the world, many of them are living in earthly hell. They live in concentration camps, they live in refugee camps. Looking outside only leads you to squalor. Does the pandemic, has the pandemic refocused us? We're not so self focused, and that our focus is on, it's not just us, it's Muslims in the world?
I,
Well,
you know,
don't think I don't think the Muslims are focusing just on themselves, but the whole idea of being able to be a practical, self-assisted community is being able to do something about the situation when you find others in distress. And there's only so much you can do besides preaching, organizing, fundraising, lobbying politicians, and things of that nature, and making people aware of the problems that affect the community as a whole.
But I was talking about you and Abdullah kind of talked about you talked about it as being locked down and your house become a prison. Abdullah talked about the need for human relationships. And what I'm saying is, doesn't that sound very, very Western?
Doesn't it sound
well,
very what?
Western.
what Western? I no, I would disagree.
Okay.
The reality, I mean, these are the experiences that people are going through. This is what's reporting in anecdotally in conversations I personally have with Muslim leaders. They're relaying stories of I don't want to say it's always stories of depression, but you can sense that people are wary. I mean, another example of it is, and we see it in society as a whole, where people now are just kind of disregarding public health guidance and just saying, "Well, virus be darned, I'm going to do what I want to do."
Right, right.
And that doesn't bode well. That's why we're currently in the state of Illinois under a more severe lockdown in terms of public gatherings limited to 10. So if you want to, if you call it Western, well, we're in the West and we're feeling it.
Well, I want us to get to, we talk about many times ourselves as a ummah, but when we talk, the reference is ourselves. And we forget about, if we were to look at the pandemic as a reckoning, couldn't a part of that reckoning be to think beyond what we sitting in the West are used to and think about what Muslims are facing across the globe? With that question, we're going to take a break and adjust some of our technology, and we'll be right back. This is Professor Amin Al-Din with attorney Abdullah Mitchell and Imam Frederick Al-Din, and this is the conversation on race and other things in Muslim communities. We'll be right back.
Billboards are popping up all over the country with an
Our neighbors don't realize that Muslims are absolutely opposed to ISIS.
Salam. My name is Abdul Malik Mujahid. I'm an imam in Chicago.
16 shots! No me! No justice! No me!
So how do we bring up the energy which can really have an impact on the world? You need to build bridges of understanding among people, and we need to have America moving forward.
That lesson learned have brought the strength of humanity to America, which is the diversity.
Mujahid Talks, only on Muslim Network TV. Faithfully connected.
This is Professor Amin Al-Din, a host for Muslim Network TV on the program Critical Talk, and I'm having a conversation on race and a lot of other things in the community with attorney Abdullah Mitchell and Imam Frederick Al-Din. And I want to go back to where I was, which is, if we consider the pandemic a reckoning, how have we considered how to revise, rethink how we think about things? For us, getting quarantine fatigue means, oh, I got to stay in my house. Well, your house is not a prison. A prison is a cell block with concrete stuff in that you don't get to move around at will and go from room to room and have a refrigerator to open and windows to open and close and a front door to peek out of. So, is home really a prison? We don't live in refugee camps where rushing to get outside means we look at the squalor and the waste all around us. So, do we need to rethink a little bit?
Well, there's definitely a need to rethink, and we are rethinking. I mean, even in terms of as we reevaluate how we're going to worship in the setting of a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
But I think your question really calls for a larger examination of the plight of, as you introduced your question, the plight of Muslims, not only around the world. We don't need to go halfway around the world to see disparities or inequities. We can do it right here. We don't have to go beyond the city of Chicago, where many Muslim families who are not fully integrated into the society, i.e., they may be recent immigrants or refugees, or even if they've been here for years, or even born here, they have not fully been integrated into the system. They have these marginal jobs, the service industry, restaurants, retail, taxi cab drivers, the whole hospitality industry, which has been, undercut by the pandemic. And in turn, these people have lost their jobs, the means of livelihood, and are depending on charity and all too often to make it, to survive, to feed their family, to have shelter. So I don't think enough has been done as a community for us to draw our attention to that. It's not like a show. We have one instance where, like, at the Eid other, we're going to distribute meat, and then nothing happens in between. There needs to be more aggressive push to reach out to others that are impacted by this.
Imam Frederick?
Well, I think the attorney makes good points, and he comes from a perspective where he certainly knows what he's talking about. I can only add again that communities are responsible for the area where they have the resources, the skill and knowledge to render effective assistance. And to try to do so beyond resources is really romantic, but that's not practical, and that's not what it's called for. What it's called for is being able to use available resources, available skills and talents, and do something that effectively addresses the situation confronting distressed Muslim communities. And the whole idea of people coming to this country being socialized leaves out another process going in the other direction. And that is, while people are we want them to be socialized here, they come to us with cultural understandings and values that push against our attempts to socialize them and cause them tighter to the traditions that brought them, that they were raised in, and even painting the situation with the brush that says, where I came from is better than what I have here, and even though what I have here is nice, I'm going to stick to the old ways. So we have to try to make sure people are acculturated and voluntarily so, and don't use back home values and mores that run counter to what we try to hold as valuable here in this culture.
So what both of you are
They got to put their children to the wheel.
So what both of you are saying is that the notion of an ummah that is concerned about one another is just that. It's an ideal. And what each community has to be concerned with is its own. And if that community is not able to be concerned with its own, then what happens?
Well, it has to go beyond when you say your own. Let's be clear what that means. your own. I mean, we have a responsibility beyond the four walls of our home, before the walls of our masjid. What is our responsibility to the community as a whole? We are charged with being to be concerned for, as the Quran puts it, the orphan. And the orphan is not merely that individual who's without parents, it's those without support. The parental society, to the extent that they cannot make it. What is our obligation to this segment of our society, regardless of their religious belief? But what the point I'm trying to make is that as we begin to stretch out, or as we should stretch out beyond our own immediate needs, and considering the needs, identifying for the needs, this is our obligation, in terms of being a charitable people, and even from a point of social justice, it's an obligation on us that no family should be left out in the cold, should be hungry. This is an obligation that as a community we must all assume.
But doesn't that help our own mental health when we consider beyond our needs? You know, if you are sitting consumed by, oh, I need to get out, I'm going crazy inside my house, as opposed to, let me get busy and help others, and see where I can put my skill. That seems to be a more healthy mental attitude than worrying about what I can't do for myself. Amen, Maldine?
Well, that's true if your self situation is in a good if you're in a good situation. It's one thing to be involved with the wonderful feel good activities of providing food for people who come as immigrants, but are people who are like yourselves from the African American community, for example, what other communities there may be who are needy. But you have to make sure that that is being done with the full awareness that I've done what I should do for my family and myself to make us strong so that we can help others more effectively. It's not sensible to let your hand be so open that you don't help yourself, but you want to be consumed with trying to help others that may be better able to help themselves than you can help them. I
I
just have to be
I
realistic.
would I agree with Iman Aldine to an extent. The other question that we have to ask ourselves is, from our own say selfish space, let us not be too narrow in our definition or too broad that, oh, how much I need. I don't how much I need. In other words, I guess what I'm really pushing the point is that our self-interest should not dictate our need or our obligation to reach out to those beyond our immediate family. You know, I think that, without elaborating further, that there is that dichotomy or that tension between not to sacrifice the home for to, as you say, give out beyond your need. The question is, we need to have a realistic assessment of what we really need, because it's one thing to say I'm going to go without meat, and then there's others that are going without anything to eat. We have to look at those equities in
There are
all our
limited,
decisions.
there are limited things that a Muslim is required to do. The Fard Kafaya is there are five or six things that you have to do, and none of them says that you need to make yourself destitute trying to help others in a negative situation. But it says you have to be able to act from a position of strength and resourcefulness and understanding to help others. Not that you have to weaken yourself trying to do something that you're not qualified or resource equipped to do.
Well, that's very interesting. We're in the Christian season of giving, and all the Muslim organizations have decided to join the Christian season of giving by having all of their fundraisers at the same time. I mean, during this span of the season of giving. What does that say? And why not have your annual fundraiser in May?
Well, I think you're ignoring the impact of the pandemic. As a result of the pandemic, congregational services, gatherings have been really half right now are closed. And we know a mosque, just like many houses of worship, depend on the generosity of their membership when they come to services. Mm-hmm. So, and the other thing is just the challenge of how do you go do fundraising virtually? Therein is another challenge.
So we had pre-pandemic, we were still having annual fundraising during the Christian season of giving.
Well, I know that I think there may have been those that populate during this time, but my person, I've witnessed those fundraisers going throughout the year, starting in January, all the way through December. Clearly, the fall season is a big time for Muslim organizations when they do those galas or fundraisers. But fundamentally, I think we cannot ignore the impact that this pandemic has had on organizations in terms of maintaining their financial sustainability.
So do you think, Imam Al-Din, that some organizations are really going to have to regroup when they're fundraising? Because, I mean, it's only so much people can give during a pandemic, and they're giving to 8, 9, or 10 different Muslim causes. So do you think that some of the organizations will wind up regrouping and rethinking themselves?
Well, all I know is that I don't know anywhere in the world where we're supposed to be giving all the time, fundraising all the time. I think we're supposed to be trying to establish institutions and establish cultures based on the values and principles of this group. And just by doing that, you are contributing to any communities in which you find yourself embedded. But the idea of becoming focused on, we need a fundraiser for this group, a fundraiser for that group. There are specific times of the year when we have traditionally been called on to provide funds to help Muslims who are in need. And it's not every day or every week or every month. There are specific times for that. In addition, Muslims who have the means and the understanding can give sadaqah to help others as they need to do so.
Okay, let me move along to another question, and we're going to take a quick break and come back to that, and that is the vaccine. This is Professor Amin Al-Din for Muslim Network TV, and this is program Critical Talk, and we're having a conversation on race, which we're really going to have also when we come back. I'm talking with Attorney Abdullah Mitchell and Imam Frederick Al-Din. We'll be right back.
Assalamu alaikum!
I love Adam's World because it makes me learn in a fun way. That Adam has a green face and orange hair. I like this song. I like how Adam sings. I like Adam's World because it makes me happy. What? No. And here's Adam and here's Anissa. Adam and his sister. Adam is a boy and he is really smart.
Download the new Adam's World app at adamsworldapp.com and let's help tomorrow's Muslims today.
This is Professor Amin Al-Din, and we're back on Critical Talk, which is a production of Muslim Network TV. and I'm having a kind of general conversation with Attorney Abdullah Mitchell and Frederick Aldine about things in the Muslim community that we're going to have to pay attention to, one of which is the vaccine. What are your thoughts on the information you have, the information you would need? It's a personal decision as to whether or not you would take the vaccine. But what do you think about the information that's being provided?
I think we should collectively commend the state of Illinois in terms of how it and the Illinois Department of Public Health is keeping the populace informed of what's happening, not only in terms of the guidance it's providing, in terms of public health directives and how we can be safe during this time. But now with the advent of this vaccine, there's opportunities that's being provided by the state of Illinois, the city of Chicago, to inform us as a body what the methodology was in developing the vaccine, as well as any potential risks that may be exposed. So it's about us, everyone, being involved, staying informed through the sources that the public health departments are providing.
Imam Aldine, your thoughts on the vaccine?
The prophet is supposed to have said, peace be upon him, if a fly falls in your drink on one side, take it out and dip the other side in, because if it left the disease on the left side, there's a cure on the right side of the fly. So we have evidently a cure available to us called the COVID vaccine. And we have people who've been struggling to, in the public sector, provide this, the institutions to treat the illness and to deal with the pandemic. Now we have people from the private sector, corporations that have come up with a vaccine that they said, I think there are about 4 or 5 companies that they say works. So using the institutions, the local and state government, communities ought to use their established liaisons with the larger community to find out what the plans are for administering the vaccine, report that back to their masajid and governing body, and get the believers organized to receive the vaccine. Those believers who are capable and have the ability to work through other organizations that employ them or through businesses that they run should make the same contacts for the purposes of benefiting those people who work for them or those people who are served by their institutions.
Well, one of the things that's coming to light as of this morning is that if you have certain chronic conditions and you take medicine for them, you're not eligible to take the vaccine because it will aggravate and may cause some additional problems. And one of the things they were talking about this morning was arthritis. And if you're on medicines for arthritis, you're not eligible to take the vaccine. And I think that as they go through the itinerary, what they'll find is that people on certain medications can't take this vaccine, which is the culmination of the work they've done in making vaccines for other viruses, H1N1, SARS, MRSA, etc., which is why it was able to come out so quickly. It's not new, but it's new and improved, so to speak. So I guess for Muslim communities, the physicians are going to have to find out as that list builds of who's eligible and who's not eligible. And it's interesting because many older people take medicines for arthritis, and they're automatically excluded. So we got to see what the list is going to bring, but also in the African American community, there is a history of being used as guinea pigs. And that is keeping some people from even thinking about taking the vaccine. What would you have them weigh? I think, Imam Aldin, you gave us an analogy about the fly, but how do we give them even more information as they weigh whether or not, because it won't get to everyday people for a few more months. So how do we give them, or what should we push our governor and mayor to say, huh?
The fly analogy says that in the disease is its cure, and of course, that in order to cure this virus, we're going to give you a bit of the virus itself until you can build up immunity. And we hope that the research that has been done, even though it's admittedly done quickly, has uncovered the majority of those preconditions and medicines that are not compatible with the vaccines that have been produced and that are coming on board shortly.
Yeah.
We can only hope that that the that's part of this good is calculated and is as less as possible.
Let me, if I may interject here, I think also there's an obligation on all of us. And when you raise the risks and the experience of the African American community, particularly and sometimes unknowingly being, the subject of the guinea pigs, for the lack of a better word, of experimental drugs. We can think back to Tuskegee and the Syphilis Project, but let's focus in on where we're at today. Well, let's not lose sight of the fact that we do have organizations or associations of Black physicians, the National Black Nurses Associations, and they're providing information. We have Dr. Leon McDougall, who is the president of the American Physicians Association, who is a part of the these groups, these professional medical groups that are vetting the pharmacists and identifying what the risks are. They know the questions to ask. And like I said, we need to avail ourselves. It's available on the internet. Just look up the Black Nurses Association. There's information there. The American Physicians Associations, they are there. We do have resources. It's not that we have to wait until someone says, okay, take this, and being uninformed. It is important to be informed. If for no other reason, the point that Dr. Aldin, you just mentioned, hey, if I've got arthritis and it's incompatible, if I'm not taking some affirmative steps to find out about what the limitations of this, then I'm putting myself, or maybe putting my family at risk.
So what month are we in now of this pandemic? 10?
Well, it seems like, technically the pandemic has been going on ever since December of last year. So it is a whole year. But here in the United States, it really, for us in Illinois, manifested so much that we had our first real shutdown in March, early March. Okay. So it's been a long road.
So with regard to our communities, when this is over, and it will be over whether we're here or not, what do you see if people refuse to see this as a reckoning, and they're not, and I'm listening to both of you, willing at the moment to change their thoughts about how things go, what is the future? Are we going to be the same old, same old? Is there going to be a new normal? Have folk reconsider traditions, the place of the masjid in the community, how to get young people, young adults back and active in the community when largely they have been kept at bay and are leaving, not just the Muslim community, they're leaving all faith communities who don't get it together. What is going to happen when this is over?
Well, I wouldn't agree with the analogy that a new, whether it be a new.
Of the election.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
Go ahead.
Let me while we go through that. I don't agree with the notion that we're going to have a new. We're as human beings, we're always resistance to change. We get in a comfort zone, and we don't like changing. Now, it's clear that this pandemic has imposed change upon us. Like I said, how we're worshiping. We're not in the masjid, shoulder to shoulder, foot to foot. We're viewing and khutbahs and lectures over the internet, as opposed to being in the masala area together. Nonetheless, there are things that are rooted in our culture, regardless of what culture we come from, that are not going to be given up easily. My larger concern, though, when we start talking about what that change will look like, is how this has impacted, let's say, the economic structure of our society. So many businesses are closed. So many people, particularly in communities of color, particularly in the African American community, have been pushed out of the economic structure of this country. And once again, there's really there's no answers that have been provided. How do you bring back these people, those who have been displaced by the pandemic, back into the system? This needs to be a concerted effort by all our political and let's say leaders in our country, in our communities, to address this.
Well, what would the two of you offer? What is a baseline for the disparities that you talk about? Will those people ever be able to even get back to where they were? And if not, then what are some possibilities? If they are, what are some possibilities?
That's a hard one.
That's
a hard question.
We are missing.
Huh?
One of the trends that we're missing is very important to consider, and that is the increasing tendency of governments to become autocratic and dictatorial. Percent of the Muslim population in the United States is understood to have voted for the outgoing administration, and that represented the move of autocracy. And they have particular programs with regard to and running government and the rule of law. If that trend continues beyond the Biden administration, with leading a loyal opposition effectively from the outside, the impact of an autocratic government will be what we're all confronted with, and we'll have to deal with that reality if and when it occurs.
As I consider what Imam Al-Din has just shared with us, I think what it is there is what we continue to witness displays of white supremacy, most recently in Washington, D.C., where Black Lives Matter flags were torn down from churches and burned. So there is that mentality that has to be challenged. It has to be challenged by all communities of faith. And I'm not talking about a challenge based on physical confrontations. That doesn't solve the problem. It just fuels the fire. But the notions, the principles, the policies that white supremacy is based on has to continue to be challenged. Not only, like I said, not only legislatively, but how in terms of how we as a community engage with others. We should not accept that as to be the norm, that because of the color of my skin, I am better. I mean, this is a fight that as African Americans, we've been fighting since our arrival, 1619, in this United States. And it is unfortunate it's not over. As we witnessed unfortunately this summer, now that's being made obvious to so many other segments of our society here in the United States. But nonetheless, that continues to be the struggle that we must remain focused on.
Well, what is happening in the Muslim community now that we're all online? I'm sorry, Ma'am Al-Din. Imam Aldin, I didn't hear you.
I was going to say one other thing that's changed and different about the situation. I said one of the things that is different about our fight against racism is the 2045, when white people will be the minority in this country. And on that very point, Ejumio Oluo, a writer, has written a just released called Mediocre, The Dangerous Legacy of White Male Racism. So that all word of it is mediocre. And it talks about how capitalism was set up not only to make people profit, but also to ensure to Caucasians that there's a system where they can realize profitability and good living, regardless of whether or not they have the skills to do so, and if not, blame somebody else. That looking ahead at 2045, which the followers of autocrats are looking at focused on, is something that has to be put into the mix as we come across the strategies to deal with effective fighting against racism.
Well, one of the things is, if you remember,
The upper hand will not will.
One of the things is, if you remember in the book Caste, what Isabel Wilkerson says is that since the first utterance of whites are going to become the minority, whites already figured out that they'll promote others by skin color into the enclaves of whiteness. Number one. Number two, because people are small in number, that doesn't mean that they're not going to rule over you. Look at what the British did in India with, 10, 20 times their population, ruled them for almost 200 years. So numbers is not going to change it. But in our communities, how are we getting the tools to fight the racism that the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter protests and the absence of us being able to traditionally celebrate stuff? Some communities going to Muslim art for anti-racism training. How are we going to continue that into the future? So at least in our communities, we have made a change, or are we stuck where we are?
The
Develop a mentality that's, if I can believe that I can be helpful to others, I need to do whatever is necessary to establish myself in a position to take the lead in doing. If a community raised up by Allah to benefit humanity, we need to be a sovereign, capable community with that to successfully.
I agree with Imam Aldin in terms of the concept of sovereignty really means is self-reliance. How, and we can discuss what we don't have, or we need to assess what we do have, and because overall, my concern, hopefully, that God willing, will not be borne out over as time goes on, but once we witness the killing of George Floyd, it sparked something in the minds where people said, "Oh, you've just not, all you African Americans, you just not been complaining. We see it's real now. Oh, we need to do something." But it has to be something more than just, we're going to have a rally. We're going to, acknowledge this. We're going to put a few dollars on the problem. When you're dealing with systemic racism, it's a long-term commitment to bring around change. To say that we have not been patient in the process, it begs the question to us. This has been a process we've been dealing with for 400 years, and it continues. And that the question is will we have other partners in this effort to eliminate systemic racism. And the other larger issue that I agree with Imam Al-Din is, regardless if their partners are there or not, we must do whatever we can to eliminate it.
Well, do we have new tools or different tools, new strategies or different strategies?
In the area of, I would say, and once again, I'm speaking from the limited window that I have. In the area, let's talk about healthcare in terms of the emphasis that even under the Affordable Care Act, the emphasis shifted from we're going to providing medical care for whatever your ailment is, to the point now that to develop a sense of responsibility for one's own health, to become more informed and more about nutrition and how exercise and diet impact our physical well-being. So it's the healthcare disparities exist that we got to continue to fight. Not having adequate access to healthcare facilities, not having adequate access to the distribution of nutritious foods in our communities, the food desert. It's real in the African American community. So what I'm saying is, yes, there's much more that needs to be done, but clearly we need to begin with ourselves, because, like I said, once the glare of this whole uproar about the death of George Floyd passes, who will still be there on the sidelines saying, yes, I stand with you to eliminate systemic racism. I understand the oppression that you're dealing, and I will not forsake you as a brother, as a partner. Whomever that is, that they're welcome, but it still cannot stop the effort that as a community we must do, and whatever resources we have, to address these problems.
Imam Al-Din, your comments? New tools, new strategies, what?
The strategy that has been demonstrated to be effective is one where the popular masses have shown that they have an affinity for leadership based on truth and strength. We are in an environment where leaders that best present the truth and show the practical aspects of it will succeed and will prevail. So I think that's the best street that we have, and we are equipped as a community of believers to effectively present that strategy and the truth that are out there to be given to the needy masses. And one other point I want to raise is on a different subject, and that is, I hope that Senator Cory Booker and Kamel accept to the passage of an anti-lynching bill that they can pass, rather than trying to fight for one that cannot pass muster.
Exactly.
Wasting time. Let's get a bill on the books and then deal with the issues later.
Well, given those things, one of the things for the Muslim community that the pandemic and the changes in traditions has opened the door for is women in leadership. Muslim Arc is run by a female. The medical initiative and mental health thing is led by another female. So do you think that some of these initiatives will change the look of the Muslim community?
God willing, we need it. There are too many organizations in the Muslim community that have been male dominated and continue to be male dominated, and the voice of whatever the population demographics demonstrate, 50%, whatever that's in, where that voice is not at the table, it's not sufficiently heard. That needs to be that needs to be a part of the change, whether we see it coming organically, or we have to, nurture it and fertilize it more, but it's definitely something that needs to come to pass.
Imam Al-Din, we have 30 seconds. Let me give you the last word.
The inevitable leadership role taken and performed by women and in general is there, a fait accompli. It's there. There's nothing you can do about it. And if you don't want to be successful, avoid it. But if you want to try to be helpful and benefit society, join and find women who are doing things, magnificent things in different ways, different organizations to help bring humanity back to human concern. Go get them, girls.
This is Professor Aman Al-Din on Muslim Network TV with Critical Talk, and I've been having a wide-ranging conversation with attorney Abdullah Mitchell and Imam Frederick Al-Din. This has been a really good talk. I mean, we just have too many things to talk about. Hopefully you will tune in next time, and I want to thank both of you.
Thank you for having us.